my story is unique because it's mine, but it's not unique because it's shared with so many, I'm sure, of you guys in the room, and the families and the wives and girlfriends and people that are here in the room tonight. And I share it with probably millions of other service members that are out there and have deployed in support of the wars in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Somalia, or even our international brothers and sisters that have been doing this stuff all over the world for the last several decades. So I think it's important to come to a place like this and share our stories. If I was around a half a dozen guys from my ODA, our war stories would probably sound a little bit different. And I enjoy telling those stories sometimes with those guys, but for the most part, I don't get a lot out of those stories anymore, because as important as it is, and as much as I still oddly have fond memories of those times with those guys, being able to accept that as a part of our lives and move forward and to really embrace the great things we can do in our lives, beyond our military service or just beyond our experience in combat, specifically, I think is really, really important. So if we get nothing else out of this evening, I just want to leave you guys with that when we're done here, is that I'm proud of the time I spent in the Army, but I hope that I'm more proud of what I do from this day forward by taking the lessons that I learned and the experiences and the friends that I made and the connections and being a great dad and a great leader and just a great citizen and a great member of my community. So that's really what I kind of want to talk about here. So I wasn't sure. BD said I had to have a title for the talk, and I didn't know. I thought Blayne's story was probably not good. Not a marketing guy, but so I called it Now What? And I put a question mark at the end. So it's like, now what? Because I think there's a couple instances in every warrior's life where they have to make a transition. Maybe more than one. Maybe it's one big one. Everyone's story is a little bit different, but I think that we're all going to have to transition and take the uniform off at some point. Whether you join when you're 17 or 18 years old and you do 2 or 3 years or 4 or 5 years, or whether you stay on and you retire after 30 years or 35 years of service, at some point we're all going to take the uniform off. And so that's one big transition. But for many of us, there's more. Life is very subtle. It's got a lot of undulations, and we're changing all the time. So, I've caught myself a couple of times in my life asking this question. And I don't have any answers for anybody else. I was barely able to sort of muddle through it myself a couple times, but I hope that maybe telling my story can help shed a little light on this. So I failed to introduce myself. My name's Blayne. I served in the Army from 2001 to 2010. I was a scout platoon leader for a while. I was very lucky. I led 2 platoons out of the 1st Cavalry Division in Fort Hood, Texas, and I did about a year over in Iraq in 2004 as a scout platoon leader. And I won't talk much about that deployment here. It was significant, but it was, I guess if you could call it a good deployment. A couple of my guys got injured a little bit, and it was scary as hell a lot of the time, but I felt really good about what I was doing over there, and we were engaged in a really active mission, and we fought hard, and we felt like we were doing some good. And I came home, and the problem is, when I was over in Iraq in 2004, I met these dudes from 5th Special Forces Group, and they were badass. I really looked up to these guys, and they were a couple of guys. They couldn't have been more than 27 or 28 years old probably. They were staff sergeants from Triple Nickel, from ODA 555. And because I was the Brigade Reconnaissance Team Leader, I was lucky enough to spend some time with these guys because they had more work than they could deal with. And so they were handing us targets, and they were handing us stuff, and we were going out on operations with them, and I thought, this is how we're going to win. If we're going to win in Iraq, these are the guys that are going to win the war for us, because they've got good intel, they've got taxi cabs, and they've got, they know what they're doing. And so I got home in November of 2004 from my tour, and I went about 20 days later to SFAS. I went to selection, and I got selected, and then I spent the next couple years in the Q course, and then went to 3rd Special Forces Group in 2007 at Fort Bragg. And then that's sort of where this story begins anyway. BD said I could only have 15 minutes, so I had to cut some stuff off. So some of you guys probably recognize this landscape. For those of you that don't, I suppose it could be like Nevada, but that's this. Yeah, exactly. Calgary. No, this is This is Kandahar in southern Afghanistan, and this is a picture I took on a little disposable camera, or a little digital camera I had on my kit when I was deployed there. And this is sort of where this story begins, because my team was in touch with the team that was forward as we were getting ready to roll our next deployment into Afghanistan in 2008, 2009. And so we talked to them on the red side all the time. So we knew what they were up to. We were trying to stay abreast of the situation, and we wanted to hit the ground running. And as 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, as we got closer and closer to our next deployment, the situation on the ground was getting worse and worse, and it didn't look good. And 9 of the 12 guys on the ODA from 7th Group that were there got Purple Hearts. They won the Purple Heart during their deployment to Afghanistan. And so we knew that it was not going to be pretty when we showed up, and we were a good team. I mean, I know I'm biased, but we were a really good team. We were really tight, and our commander gave us this shitty mission because he felt like we could handle it. And so here we go, barrel-chested freedom fighters, big beards, and we're ready to go into southern Afghanistan. And so this is the good side of it. You know what I mean? I think this is important to point out, because a lot of us go over to these places like Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever, not because we want to slide down ropes and shoot people in the face. I mean, a lot of us say that when we're back in the team room or at the range because it makes us sound cool. And as the captain of my team, I wanted my guys to know that I was ready to deal some violence on their behalf, because that was my job. And I embraced that. But, none of us, don't let anyone fool you, none of us lose sight of the fact that this is really what it's about. These are human beings, and when you get there, you realize that pretty quickly. If you look really closely here, you can see I'm covering up a frag grenade with my right hand, because I don't want one of those kids to snatch it off of me, but I didn't have my gun. It was for a picture. My commander never saw this, but you get there with some hope that the time you spend there, especially as an SF guy, living with and amongst the people, this is about 90 kilometers from the next friendly position. This is way up in Uruzgan, Afghanistan. There was no road to here. We lived on a little tiny fire base. It was about 200 by 200 with 90 of our Afghan friends. And this was a little village right outside the fire base there. And the hope is that you spend your 6 months or your year there, and it's a little better place for these folks when you leave, because hopefully I'm going home in 6 months or in 7 months. These guys got to stay. And we're hoping we can do some good in the long run. So this is what you show up thinking, we're going to work toward. These folks here, these are Hazara. So I don't know if you guys are that familiar with Afghanistan, but there's a minority population kind of in the central and the northeastern part of Afghanistan. They're an ethnicity called the Hazaras, and they look kind of like Mongolian. They look much more Asian than like the Pashtun Afghans. And they're really an oppressed minority. They have been for a long, long time. And they were our friends there because they were ready to help out the Americans. They wanted to start building a better life for themselves. And so these were our friends. And these are great little girls. They all went to school. It was awesome. You can see they had really cool clothes their parents made for them. And but here's the thing about this picture. This was taken about 2 hours before an IED took the life of a few of my friends, about 400 kilometers down the road from where this was taken. So this is a special picture for me, because it's the last photo that was taken on that day on 20 February 2009. And this is my team was still mostly intact here. And so I try to look back on this not with sadness or guilt or remorse anymore, but I try to look back on this as a fond memory, because at that moment in time, you can't see it, but there's a little bit of a shadow right here. Can you guys see that? So that's my team sergeant, Dave Hurt, Big Hurt. He was kind of like BD. He was this big hulk of a man that he could bench press 400 pounds, and we just thought he was invincible. He'd been on like 6 deployments. He was really my mentor, even though I was the team leader. And that's his shadow right there. He's not in the picture, but he was hanging out. There's a bunch of kids laughing with him. He was just kind of one of those guys that everyone gravitated toward. And that's the last picture I have of that shadow right there. That's the last sort of known shot of my friend Dave. And so this is what you end up doing a lot of. I'm kind of halfway smiling here, but this was after about 36 hours on an objective in Helmand, Afghanistan. And if you guys look back here, see these really pretty flowers? You guys know what those are? Yeah, right? So those are poppies, which are some of the most beautiful flowers in the world. And like our friends, the Brits and the Australians, they wear one on their lapel in November every year. That's kind of like their Veterans Day. They wear the poppies. But, 8 or 12 hours before that, we cleared every door in some bazaar, and we dropped thousands of pounds of ordnance on the Taliban who were they'd cut us off. We had flown in on helicopters at night to hit a bazaar where we thought there was an IED factory and a ton of black tar opium. And we got there and we found it, which is pretty cool. So we blow the doors off and we find all this stuff, and then our commander calls on the radio, the big god in the sky who's watching it all on the UAV feed, says, you know what, clear the whole thing. You're on a gold mine, and all the locals had left town when we showed up, which is a good sign in the short term. It's a bad sign in the long term. And so we stayed. We stayed all night, and we cleared every single door in that whole big-ass bazaar in Helmand. We found a whole bunch more stuff, and it's getting really late. And they said, well, you need some more guys. They sent us the reserves. So we got like another 12 dudes showed up on a helicopter with a pallet of water, and they helped us. And the next thing you know, you start to see the sun come up, and we're thinking, man, this is bad. This is bad because Task Force 160th, the Night Stalkers, the really cool helicopter pilots, they dropped us off on the objective right where we wanted to be. They did a nice job, plus or minus 30 seconds. That's how they do it. But those guys don't fly during the day. That's their deal, apparently. So I guess that's cool.
Now you're stranded in this beautiful field.
Bam. So we're stuck in this bazaar on these rooftops with this beautiful field of poppy all around us, and it was really a weird feeling. And as soon as the sun started to come up, we started hearing the ICOM chatter. You guys know you have these little radios that your interpreters carry, and they can listen to the Taliban talking back and forth on their little intercom radios. So we're in this really weird spot, and you start seeing the guys on the motorcycles, and you see them moving around in the huts, and we're circled, and so we stayed there for all day and fought these guys off and dropped thousands of pounds of ordnance, and it was a long, rough day. And the speedball that dropped our chow and our water that we needed missed by a little bit and dropped it next to this building. And the Taliban occupied the building as they were assaulting us, and we dropped a 500-pound bomb on it, and we blew up our chow and our water. So in this picture, I haven't eaten in a day and a half or 2 days, and I'm completely dehydrated. Some of my guys were smart enough to steal some orange soda from like the bazaar down below. If you guys ever had that really syrupy orange soda. And some sunglasses. I had my clear eye pro on because we weren't supposed to be there during the daytime. So my eyes are squinted, but it's just this interesting kind of juxtaposition between, you see like the poppies, and I'm trying to smile. We're actually running for the birds here because the guys from the 101st agreed to come get us a few hours early. So we're running for the birds, and one of my friends in the DEA actually snapped this photo of me real quick so I could have it as like a memory. So it's kind of cool I get to share it with you guys here, but that's the reality of what goes on over there. Like you think you're going to do some of this, and you hope you do, but you end up doing a lot of that, even with the poppies in the background. This is actually on a rooftop also in Helmand about 30 seconds before I got shot at. There's these humps in the roof. You can't really see them. My friend Lindsay is actually sleeping in one of the creases right there next to me. I have a great picture of him sleeping too, which I've shown around on a few slideshows just to make fun of him, sleeping on the objective. But yeah, so right over here there's a little wall, crack, and we had an RPG skip right about there and hit the building we were on. And you don't know. Life's very different over there because one minute you're doing this, you're posing because you look like Rambo and you want like chicks to think you're cool back in the States. And maybe. And the next thing you know, there's an RPG skipping off the wall of the building you're in. So these three gentlemen, this is Dave Hurt right here, I was telling you about. This is Mark Small. He was killed on 12 February 2009, just 8 days prior, actually. He was shot by a sniper while we were out on an objective. And this is Jeremy Bessa. He was driving Dave's truck when it got hit by the IED on the 20th of February. And there's a couple guys not pictured here that I really want to mention is, so Tim Davis was our Air Force CCT. He was on the truck as well, died that day. He's not in this photo. Any CrossFitters in here willing to admit it? Of course you are. All CrossFitters are willing to admit it. Yeah. These guys too. So if you guys have ever done the CrossFit workout DT, that's the hero WOD that was named after Tim Davis. And so there's actually a CrossFit hero WOD named Small, which is terrible. It's going to take you at least 45 or 50 minutes. It's named after this guy right here, which is ironic because he hated CrossFit and would never have done that workout with a gun to his head. So we do it every February 12th at our gym in Tampa, and the whole time I'm smiling because I'm like, you son of a bitch. He's laughing. He's sitting there right now perched up with a Yingling laughing at me doing burpees and box jumps and running and stuff. So, but in all seriousness, the thought of these three gentlemen occupied my mind for a long time. And I came home from Afghanistan in 2009. I got out of the Army late 2009, early 2010, which was sort of my plan. I joined the Army to be a platoon leader, and I got to do it twice. And then I found these SF guys, and there just happened to be a couple wars going on. So I went to selection, and I became an SF detachment commander, and that's what I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to do in the Army, to be honest with you. I was very lucky. I had a chance to live the dream. All I ever did was be a platoon leader and a detachment commander, for almost 9 years. And so it was time for me to go. But there were a lot of things that I had to reconcile because, for one, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with my life outside the military. I really didn't. I went to West Point. I had a good degree. I could get a job, but none of it really appealed to me. There was nothing really pulling me out of the Army. It was just time to be home. It was time to be home. Dylan was 3.5 years old, and I'd missed probably at least half of his life at that point. And Dalton G here was born the week after I got home from Afghanistan from this trip. So I had a lot going on in my head, and now what? Now what am I going to do? So I got a job. Some guy told me it was going to be a really good job. I could make a lot of money selling medical stuff to hospitals and surgery centers in Tampa Bay and all over the state of Florida. Big Medicare population apparently down here. And I could be my own boss and make my own hours and make a lot of money. And I thought, okay, that seems cool. I could do that. And so I moved to Tampa and took this job, and I put my my red tie on. And Dylan had to move to Tampa too. He was part of the deal. And I would get in my Camry, if you guys can envision this. So this dude right here, 6 months fast forward, right? 6-7 months fast forward. I'm getting in my Camry in my driveway.
The car with the really uncomfortable seats.
And I'm backing out of my driveway to go to work in my my gated golf course community, and I kind of tip the rearview mirror a little bit, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? Who are you? What are you doing? And all I could really think about was these guys. I thought a little bit about that guy. I thought a lot about these guys. I didn't know. I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, why I was doing it. And I spent a lot of time thinking about these gentlemen, but I probably should have spent a little more time thinking about these gentlemen right here. I put them on the slide. I shouldn't have, because they're giving you enough of their own show up here in the front, but it's already gone sideways. But this is where I think I really want to make a point here, and I'm sorry, I'm probably getting a little long, but for those of us out here who have lost a lot of these guys, I think it's really important when you're wondering now what, whether it's what you're going to do for your job or what you're going to do with your life or what are you going to do about this and what's going on in your head. I think it's nice to think about these guys because they still need you. They're still there, and they need all of you forever. And here's a little secret that you guys might not be aware of. These guys, they don't want you to be miserable. Right? They don't want you drowning your sorrows in the bottle or feeling guilty because you make a big paycheck. They're not looking down cursing you because you're living a good life or you have a nice house or a swimming pool. They're not. These guys, I know these clowns right here, they're all having a bud or a Yingling, and they want for me and my teammates that were lucky enough to make it home to live our lives to the very fullest. And more importantly, here's another a subtlety, I think, is that, you don't just owe it to them to do something great with your life. I think we can get a little twisted up there in thinking, because this is what really I struggled with is that I felt like I had to do something meaningful with my life. So like at one point I almost stopped doing medical sales to like join the CIA or the FBI or do some defense contracting because I felt like what I was doing in my life wasn't important enough. It wasn't meaningful enough, not just to fulfill me, but I felt like I was sort of doing these guys a disservice because like my life, I wasn't like kicking doors and like saving the world anymore, if I ever was in the first place, right? So this is okay. You know what I mean? Like you can take the uniform off and like, this is okay. This is making a positive impact on the world around you. This is setting a good example for your children. This is being completely present in the moment and being happy. Because there's a lot that went on, and I'll spare you guys the details, between here and here and here. There's some divorce and some single dad, and there's all kinds of, tough stuff that went on between there. And it's not that I don't want to talk about that, but I'll save you the time. But this is the bigger, more important message here is like, if you figure it out sooner, good. And that's part of what I do for my work is to try to give people a good outlet to figure this stuff out before they're left saying, now what? So for me, it was now what? I left the military and I didn't quite figure it out. And then one day I found myself in an apartment starting over, feeling like I was in the twilight zone, saying, now what? And I had to kickstart it again. And in many ways, as sad as it was really the best thing for me because it forced me to start making some positive steps and to start being this guy. Because this guy here, that's him there, for sure, 100%. But there was some space in between where that wasn't. And it wasn't because of the tie. And it wasn't because of the Camry or the paycheck. It was because I stopped doing this stuff. My mountain bike tires went flat. My golf clubs went rusty. My soccer cleats, I started playing soccer as sort of a newly single person, and my first game, the cleats ripped off the bottom of the sole of my soccer cleats because they'd been hanging out in my garage and they dry rotted. Same with my golf spikes. It was a bad situation. My guitar was just dusty and out of tune. I used to do some pretty cool stuff. Not just shoot people. I used to actually have some hobbies, And I just kind of let it all crater in because I was trying to save the world and have a life that was so meaningful and purposeful to make my buddies proud. And it took me a long time to realize to make them proud, they just want me to be happy. And I don't have to answer the red phone when the president calls to make my friends proud and to live a life that was worthy of their sacrifice. I would be remiss if I don't point out this Greek goddess right here. And it's not just good branding for Team RWB, which it is. But I met Jenny a while ago now, a few years ago, and this was when I started doing stuff again. I started meeting good people. And this is a crazy notion, but I got out of my house and I started like running and playing soccer, and I joined a CrossFit gym and I started doing stuff, and then I started meeting all these cool people. And it occurred to me that there were awesome people that weren't in SF. That there were actually people in Tampa that were like mechanics and yoga instructors and whatever, small business owners that were really good people and could actually relate to me a little bit and were happy to hear my story. I didn't have to tell them my story. They were really good people. And so Jenny is not only beautiful, but she's one of those people that I was able to connect with. And then, most importantly, Jenny has encouraged me to do things like this, to tell my story, because she sort of unequivocally has my back when it comes to this stuff. And I can't tell you, when you're on a team, when you're on a SEAL team or an SF team or whatever, everyone around you's got your back. Like if you shank a guy in an alley in like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, no one's telling. Okay? That's just the way it is. I didn't do that, obviously. Nor should anybody. But that's the truth, bottom line. So people just sort of unequivocally have your back. And, Jenny is the kind of person that, doesn't just tell me, like, you're a nice guy, you're handsome, you can do anything. She challenges me to do stuff like this. And I would challenge all of you, I'm not as good looking as Jenny, but I would challenge all of you to be willing to tell your story a little bit. You don't have to get up here and do it. This is taking a little bit of, working up to it for me. But when you meet people, whether they're people that were in the military or not, or your family maybe, it's okay to tell them your story and to let them be a part of it, because this is all an important part of the process, and that's why we're here tonight. So just really quickly before I walk off here, this is what we're missing when we leave the military, and you can find it a lot of places. So this slide is from our organization, Team Red, White, and Blue, and you can find us wherever you're at. But you don't have to do it through this. You can do it through any means. But if you're taking off the uniform and you're showing up in Jacksonville Beach or Tampa, Florida, or Topeka or San Antonio, you figure out a way to find some camaraderie, and it doesn't have to be someone else that used to have a beard and a plate carrier. I don't know why I put that there. I just like Costa Rica, I guess. But I guess just in closing, I would say that this is okay. If you're a veteran out there, and if you're a family member of a veteran, if you were running hard for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and if you had some bad stuff happen when you were downrange, this is okay. It's okay to live a good life. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to go to Costa Rica and sit on the beach and hang out with your wife or your girlfriend and your kids and run around. This is life. There's a lot of life beyond what you did wearing the uniform for your country, and I'm proud of you. We're all proud of that time. But it's okay to have a life afterwards, and it's okay if that life makes you happy.
Good job.